and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about how to run when it's hot weather. So in the UK right now it's getting pretty warm and we're not really used to it, and running is getting a little bit of a struggle. So I'm going to take you through a few things today that might help you run during this heat. So first of all, let's take a look at the type of running you're doing. So if you're running efforts and you want to keep running efforts, it might be useful just to make that effort just a little bit easier, because your body will already be using quite a lot of energy to maintain your temperature and regulate and just try and cool yourself down. So if you're trying to run 10 out of 10 efforts during the winter, when you're in the summer, you might want to just take that pace back, maybe make it an 8 out of 10, just because that will actually still feel like a 10 out of 10. And just don't be too disappointed if you're not hitting the same paces. In a way, like, winter has its cons because it's slippery surfaces, so you might be taking it back a little bit then. But during the summer you've got the heat, so it just depends where your your normal temperature range sits in. And for me, I know that I definitely have to take it a little bit easier during the summer. If you're just running outside and you're just doing whatever, obviously, like I've said, try to just make that pace a little bit slower. It will just feel like such a chore during the heat. So running a little bit slower, it shouldn't be something that's disappointing. It is still good to be getting out there and doing your running. In fact, it may actually be useful for you to flip over to heart rate training. In that way, you'll actually know the actual effort you're putting in, and so that might be a better comparison. Whereas in the winter, your heart rate's gonna take a little while to get up, so you'll be able to run a little bit faster. During the summer, it's probably already a little bit elevated and it will just go straight up, which means obviously it's gonna be harder. So looking at it that way, that might be a good time to swap over to heart rate. If not, just take it back a little bit and then just work on that, making that feel easier, as opposed to always trying to hit the same goal, the same pace, or even improving. It might be that if the heat really doesn't stick with you, you might want to just try and maintain it over the summer, and then back in autumn, that's where you want to see the improvements. Having a base training period isn't a bad thing. It's actually quite good for your anaerobic system, just getting it used to being outside, maybe long periods of time. So that is what I've got to say on the type of running you're doing. If during the summer you're still planning on going on for longer runs, there's going to be a few things that you're going to want to take into account when you do that. The first thing is that you're going to want some more water. Okay, having just a little bottle that's 500 millilitres probably won't be enough if you're going out during the summer. Instead, you might want a big water bladder that can hold a lot more stuff. So you want to fill these up at the top. You want to try and get out as much air as possible to try and stop it glugging, and then you just want to seal it up with its little seal, and then just mount it in your bag somewhere, and then try and get this feeder tube to you. I always find these a little bit annoying because the tube just always bashes everywhere, but that's an option if you want to carry more water. So this one is a 1.5, and this one here is a 2 litre bottle. So obviously, depending on what your backpack is and what you can take with you, that can also depend what size you're able to take. Most running backpacks do have soft flasks at the front, so you can carry a litre of water just next to your shoulders, which is normally quite a lot. But obviously in the heat, it's better to have more water than not enough. So if you're coming back with water from a long run during summer, I think that's probably preferable than just just being ugh all the way around. What you can do with bottles, soft flasks, or even these, is put a little bit of ice in it. So I fill this one up, I pop it in the freezer a little bit diagonal or just straight bottom, and then let that freeze, and then in the morning I'll top it up all the way full, so then I've got half frozen, half normal, and then by the time you're running it's already melting, and it's just keeping not only the water a little bit cooler, but wherever you've got it on you, I normally have it on my back, it'll cool you down as well, which can be quite handy, especially during the heat. You don't want to be getting too hot, because again, it's just going to put you off and make it even harder. So having something nice and cool, even if it is like making your back super wet because it is just condensating everywhere, it should be preferable than not, you know. Again, more water you have, the better. The second thing you're probably going to want to consider on longer runs is your fueling. So you might be used to taking gels, or well, that's probably something that you're used to taking. Or you might actually just go out and not have anything, or just pieces of fruit, etc. What you might want to consider is some extra electrolytes, just to try and keep that hydration from the water that you are taking in, and just make it kind of worth that much more. So I've got a couple of electrolyte mixes that I've been using. So you've got this, it's kind of like a meal replacement, but I really wouldn't call it a meal replacement. It is definitely just instead of a gel. So you put a couple of scoops of this into a 500ml water bottle, and it gives you carbohydrates, which is basically just sugar and energy, as well as a few little bits of electrolytes, just to try and keep you powered and having that energy. Obviously during the heat you're going to be sweating out quite a lot, so you're going to want to keep topping up, even if it's just little and often. That's probably a good way to go, to try and help your stomach to like stay settled. Obviously when you've got water in your stomach, you might have experienced a little like glugging that kind of goes on. This one is the whole reason somebody invented this is because they didn't want their stomach to feel unsettled, so this is a good one for that. I think also there's some ginger mix that you can get, which is also good for keeping your stomach fairly settled. I've also got a couple of these High Five Energy little tablets. These are quite nice because you don't have to have them in immediately. You could just carry one of the little tablets with you and then put that in like halfway around. So if you were doing a race, you could have it in just one pouch, and then if you decided you needed it at an aid station or something, you could just pop it in one of your bottles when you're refilling. And that will definitely give you electrolytes, which again is just to try and help keep you nice and hydrated and with the right kind of energy in your system. Extra things that you might want if you're doing really long runs is some salt tablets. I don't have any of them on hand, but I know you can get little salt tablets just to like chew on and just take to make sure that you are still getting salt, because with your sweat you're taking on salt, and salt is something that you do need within your system basically to stay alive. It shouldn't get too bad, but you will probably feel a bit drained if you haven't been taking on salt. And obviously if you're doing long runs, especially ultras, that's something that you might want to look for. So I think I've heard that if you kind of experience that your fingers kind of swelling a little bit, that could be a sign that you're not having enough salt as you're running, and it's just kind of showing itself that way. So yeah, if you notice that maybe you can't get a ring off or like move it around after a run, potentially your hands have swelled a little bit, so you're kind of on the verge. So it might be something to kind of investigate and try out, just see if that does help you, and hopefully it will, and it will keep you running for a little bit longer. Okay, next thing to say about running during the heat is make sure you've got sunscreen on. Okay, we all try to say that we don't burn, but how many of us have actually burnt? Yeah, I know particularly for me it's my ears and my shoulders, especially because I always build up a tan underneath my running t-shirts or cycling vests, so I always have a little line. But if my shoulders are out, this is on them, just to try and stop any kind of heat getting there, or at least UV from burning it. This one's a spray, we've got bottles. Obviously there are running ones that are a lot better, but I think mostly if you get ones that are water resistant, they should be pretty good for running. And I always quite like ones that are lighter. There's nothing worse than running along and just feeling like your skin's just super like sticky and it hasn't kind of like absorbed properly. So maybe look for something that's a bit thin but also does the job. This one is only a 20 SPF. And if you're in the UK right now, it is currently about 25, might even be 30 by the time it gets to the weekend. So just look out, see what there is and which ones you think will be good for running. Next up on my list of things to look out for whilst you're running during the heat is sun hats. These are kind of like twofold. You want it to keep the sun off of your face because that will protect it, as well as the sun cream, but also it will keep your hair from like being sunburned. I know it sounds crazy, but most of us have like a parting or like partings, you know, and just having this on top will stop your head from burning too much. I find that hats like this, because I have hair on my head, it can be quite hard to like get my hair in the right position. This one does an okay job. I still need to like kind of have my ponytail fairly low to get it through the hole, but it is fairly good and well ventilated. The peak on this one is quite big, so it's a Ben Parks hat and it goes all the way around. I've also got this one, which tends to be my go-to running one, because I don't have to worry about my hair, and it is effectively just a visor, so it just has the peak at the front, and that's really all I needed to do. Sometimes with a hat you do find that you do obviously get hotter because you're not able to expel the heat as much out of the top of your head, but they are worthwhile. They will protect your face, they will just keep the sun off of like the places that you don't really want to be burned. You don't want to be turning up to work after running and like just having these red face cheeks and things like that. Hat, running in the summer, essential. On the same lines, I've got some sunglasses. These aren't the best running glasses, and to be honest, because of that I don't really wear them that often, but I do wear these when I'm cycling in the heat, which is why they look, you know, really snazzy. Okay, they've got polarized, so it tries to block out quite a lot of the glare, which can be quite useful whilst you're on the road and whilst you're running, because the last thing you want to do is to be trying to squint whilst you've got sunglasses on. It just seems a bit pointless, doesn't it? You can get them in much cooler styles than this. Again, they're just stopping those UV rays getting into your eyes and just ultimately causing things that you don't really want happening. And then lastly on my list of things to think about during your summer running is socks. Okay, I know these sound like quite a small thing, but when you're running in the heat, the last thing you want is a thick pair of socks on. Your feet are going to get hot anyway because it's warm outside. On top of that, you're running, so you're not going to want your thickest socks. So these ones from Smartwool, they're great. They are quite thick. They do kind of keep you cool, but I wouldn't wear these on a long run if it was sunny, because my feet would just get way too hot. So I do have thinner pairs. So these ones I believe are from Stance, and they're just thin. Are you still, like, depending on how your running style, you still want to have that same cushioning, because you don't want to be wrecking your feet by having really thin socks that just kind of rub. But I think definitely looking at what socks you have and maybe kind of sorting them out into, right, well, this is the thickest, this is the thinnest, and just thinking what situation would I wear these in. I have one pair of thick socks that go up a little bit higher, so they're kind of like ankles, which I wear for trail running. They are thick socks, but because they protect my ankle a little bit more, they're going to be worn on the trails, because when you're running on trails during the summer, everything's a bit overgrown and you don't want to get thorns everywhere. You don't want your ankles ripped up by all of like the stinging nettles. Having that extra little bit of protection is super good. Okay, so that is most of the extras that I've got to add. So my question to you is, what kind of running sunglasses do you wear? I'm looking for some nice new ones, basically just to look a little bit better, but like don't bounce. So yeah, let me know what sunglasses you wear, and then on top of that, just make sure you're making some sensible clothing choices. Okay, I didn't touch much on it, but I think everyone can dress themselves. You know, you might want shorts, you might want leggings, but just choose ones that are gonna keep you nice and cool when it's sunny out. Hope you all have a great week of running, and I will see you next time.